shock to so many people now. The CEO of United Healthcare, huge multi-billion-dollar organization, Brian Thompson, was shot and killed this morning. To make it even more bizarre, this is a targeted attack.
It almost doesn't feel real. It feels like a little bit of a plot to a murder mystery. We had a CEO of a major American healthcare company gunned down pretty much in broad daylight, cold blood in New York City. So I'm going to give a few details on the background, and then we can get a little bit more into the reactions. But just to set the stage here. So this is Brian Thompson. Pray for the repose of his soul. He is the CEO of United Health Insurance. It's a part of a conglomerate, but he was the CEO of the United Health portion of it. The shooting took place about 6:45 Eastern time in Manhattan, close to Times Square in Central Park. He was scheduled to speak at an investor conference later that day. Obviously, conference has been canceled after this news. So the suspect is still at large, although the surveillance footage was actually posted now. And there's a few pictures out there of him pulling his mask down for, I think, at Starbucks. I think what I'm seeing is he was potentially even like flirting with the
girl was flirting with him, I think, or something.
Crazy. Yeah. If we find this guy, crazy, that would be the reason. But unfortunately, Brian Thompson, he was shot and died. I don't know if he died at the scene or later, but the assassin in the surveillance footage showed a lot of competence to the point where people are questioning whether or not this was a professional hit. It definitely was premeditated. There's no question about that. He had a silencer on his gun, which is extremely unusual,
hard to get,
especially in New York City, hard to get. Mm-hmm. And it looked like his gun jammed a few times. And there's interesting. There's a lot of gun heads on Twitter debating about why that is, whether it's a suppressor or whatever. The fact of the matter is he calmly recocked the gun 3-4 times, shot him in the back and legs, ended up killing him. So what we do know now on what's new is that they believe the suspect traveled from New York last month on a bus that originated in Atlanta. He fled on a bike. I think at first they thought it was an e-bike, but I think it might just be a bike into a park in Manhattan.
Central Park.
The
park in Manhattan. It's very easy to get lost in.
Technically that was correct, although that was probably the weirdest way you could possibly say Central Park. And so investigators have now recovered a cell phone from a pedestrian plaza which the shooter fled. Inside a nearby trash can, they found a water bottle and protein bar wrapper, which they say the gunman purchased from that Starbucks. Crime City's lab is saying that they're examining it for DNA and fingerprints. In terms of motivation, they just found the words deny, defend, and depose written on the shell casings from the gun. They intentionally left behind for people to find. These words echo a phrase commonly used by insurance industry critics, basically as a way to not pay claims. Mm-hmm. And so Thompson, father of 2 sons in a Minneapolis suburb, he leaves behind a widow and 2 sons. Really tragic. Served as CEO for more than 3 years. Apparently he had received threats before, but those threats and the details, they haven't been involved with issues involving insurance coverage. Although, as we'll get to more of the reactions on this, people are angry. Very angry, very publicly angry. And a lot of it has to do with health insurance coverage, but there's no evidence at this time that has to do with that, although that's basically implied. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah. Really intense. And now, so there's a manhunt on for him now. Has not been found.
Day 3 hasn't been found.
I think it's obviously tragic and just an indictment on New York City that like something like this happens in broad daylight. It just speaks to the complete lack of law and order, the way the police are deployed, the way they're not deployed. Another strike against the city, to which I am taking 2 of my children on Sunday. Maybe. Yeah. So I think the most interesting thing, though, of course, are the reactions that we're getting. Right. Obviously, the only appropriate human response that no matter what you think of the healthcare industry or even the guys who make the most money off of it, you don't wish death on anyone. Like, I don't want someone to go pop Joe Biden off. I don't want them to go kill Kamala Harris. I would like them to live long lives in which they can repent of their many misdeeds. This is not what healthy people wish upon anyone else, but that's not what we're hearing from the left.
Well, many public death penalty opponents seem pretty comfortable with the death penalty, just depending on who it is.
I guess they just believe in a privatized version of it.
Yeah, vigilante version.
So I'll share this.
The thing is, you have wackos on the far left and the far right who will say explosive rhetoric and crazy things. It's just that the right are those on the right who would wish death upon others are marginalized and denounced by other conservatives. Whereas the far left whack jobs who are like, oh, haha, yay, celebrating the death, they're not sidelined. They're not denounced. In fact, many of them have been, part of the elites themselves.
So one of them, the most curious, in my opinion, is Taylor Lorenz. A little background on Taylor Lorenz. She was named on the Forbes 40 under 40 list. I believe she claims responsibility for popularizing the phrase "okay, boomer." She had a bidding war over her from the Atlantic and Washington Post. This is someone that was very, very respected, listened to, had an authority when it came to internet culture. She has since left the Washington Post as a columnist after being in the press briefing room, taking a selfie and calling Biden a war criminal, I think was what got her gone. But she claims she left because she wanted to be independent. She's famous for doxing Chaya Raichik, libs of TikTok. Very interesting character. However, she
does nasty things like you say, like doxing. And then when someone tries to push back at her, she's like, oh, I'm the victim.
She cries.
So this was interesting. So she immediately says in a tweet, and people wonder why we want these executives dead right after this assassination. And then when everyone kind of was like, I can't believe you just said that out loud. It seems to me you're celebrating the assassination of this. She says, well, people are attempting to manufacture an outrage campaign over a journalist posting about the sentiment surrounding a viral news tweet. However,
which is not
I almost can't believe what she followed this up with. She writes an article after this exchange saying, yes, we, in scare quotes, want insurance executives dead. The subtitle, no, that doesn't mean people should murder them, but if you watched a loved one suffer and die from insurance denial, it's normal to wish the people responsible would suffer the same fate. Does she think that this doesn't mean that she it almost broke my brain.
You shouldn't murder them, but you should wish that someone else would. That's like,
what?
It's a very sick mind going on here. And I think, too, the interesting thing, of course, is Taylor Lorenz and others of her ilk who are making similar statements out there that, like, look, it's totally understandable that they would want to kill, blah, blah, blah. They're the same people who have been supporting things like Obamacare, socialized medicine, healthcare. When they cite this figure of 60,000 Americans died because they didn't have coverage this year, that's the result of the system that the people they've been supporting for the last 15 or 20 years have put into place. That's it,
right.
They're directing their ire at the wrong people.
Got what you wanted. You got Obamacare. Trump tried to get it repealed. McCain sided with you and kept it. So it's your system. What are you complaining about? But it's not just that. It's just that, I mean, again, Taylor Lorenz, holding two completely contradictory things at the same time. And, and again, celebrating the death, but pretending that you're not. And then you say it's Trump that's the one that's breaking down the norms.
It always comes back to Trump. Trump's
what?
responsible for this somehow, yeah.
The thing is, here's the thing I would like to point out to people, okay? Like, we have a healthcare system, right? And we have insurance precisely because at any moment, like, something bad could happen to you and you need a liver transplant or whatever the heck you need. And it's an enormous cost. So insurance is a way of, socializing the costs so that you don't like suddenly get a massive bill. I get it. Like you have to pull the risk. But the fact of the matter is, again, as Erica said, you guys got what you wanted. You force more people into the system that were health. Basically, what's going on under Obamacare is healthy people are subsidizing unhealthy people because you can't kick people off. You can't charge them more if they're unhealthy and all this other kind of stuff. So you're going to run into these problems where you're going to have to be like, well, in order to make sure that this thing isn't too expensive, and every year my premiums just keep going north every time. And so, I always joke about this. Life is about choices, right? And there's that Venn diagram, like for moms, I always see it on Twitter. It's really, and Facebook. It's funny. Like, do you want a clean house, happy kids, and your own sanity? There's three things. Pick two because you can't have all three. Well, that's the same thing with this. Like, do you want healthcare that cannot reject anybody, that every sick person, no pre-existing condition, you got to include them. Great. you also want to make it so like it's not ridiculously expensive, like $5,000 premium a month. That would be way too much. It's like, okay. But then you can't say, I also don't want it where these nameless, faceless corporations deny people coverage. It's like, what? I mean, Medicare, Medicaid deny coverage every day. Like everyone has to deny coverage. It's just not. It's not like this idea that like it's a checkbook. Like, oh, these guys make billions of dollars, therefore they can afford everything I want. No, stop. I'm not like a super capitalist, hyper crazy person, but like you set up a system where you want people to make money by trying to provide healthcare coverage to everyone, and then you complain that the price is too high or they deny too much people coverage. These things are in conflict. If you want insurance that covers everybody, then it's going to be super expensive.
Josh, put all that aside. I mean, I'm frustrated with the current state of insurance. I think there's way too many middlemen. I don't think it's great. Do I want the CEO of this person to be murdered? I mean, I think, yeah, the reactions are crazy, but it's kind of the same playbook I see with a lot of different things when it comes to issues is if you can equate people at the top to, quote, murderers, right, which is what's being done, is they're saying this CEO, this 50-year-old father of two, is somehow a murderer because at the top
all these people get denied coverage and they die.
That does not mean he's a murderer. And again, the rhetoric, it reminds me of the Trump stuff. It's like, well, if you can say he's Hitler and you can say he's the end of the world and he's going to kill everyone, then it actually becomes a thought in someone's mind. Yeah, then maybe we do need to take him out.
This is what drives me so crazy about ideology, though. Like presumably, if I gave, let's say, $200 a month, I could save so many children, let's say in Africa or whatever, right? Like, oh gosh, you just saved, 15, 16, 20 kids. Like, oh, that's awesome. It's like, wait a minute. Do I have an obligation to give every nickel I have to save everyone? Yeah. Like at some point there has to be a principle of like, okay, wait a minute now. Like, sorry. So yeah, murdering CEO. I mean, this is a dark place. I personally think, yeah, like Erica said, why should you be disappointed in the healthcare system we have now? It's your choosing. You Democrats did this all by yourself. Obamacare was done without a single Republican vote. And we were saying this should be better. You shouldn't do it like this. And you ignored us. And, in fact, you lost a Senate seat in Massachusetts after Ted Kennedy died. And you still push forward this garbage. And the fact of the matter is we tried to make it better. We tried to make it more competitive. And you said no to us every turn. And you said we want to kill people when we try to reform it.
Right.
And so, but I think Obamacare was destined to fail so that a Canadian-style total government socialized medicine, single-payer thing would come afterwards. I think that's kind of the long game they're doing on this. Eric, I know you want to talk about that these people are rapacious, evil people. No. I mean, socialists are evil people. They really want people to die.
Well, I just wanted to get Erica. Did you have anything you want to say on this before I go on to the next point?
No, I think like just someone in the chat made an interesting point that is worth just noting for the Catholics among us, which is most of us here. They said, well, what about the imprecatory Psalms? So the Psalms I assume you're referring to, which refer to like, oh, Lord, eviscerate my enemies, kill all of my people who come against me. Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't equate that with Taylor Lorenz. Like, I think that there's a distinction to be made between David asking for the Philistine army to be defeated and Taylor Lorenz, who she later posted the face of a CEO of another company as like a suggestion perhaps for the next assassin. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a distinction there. Yes, we pray for the defeat of our enemies, but definitely not for the murder of specific individuals who are more or less may or may not be responsible.
So here we go on that point of socialism, Josh. So someone was keeping track of a few things I'd like to show here. One, just to keep track, progressives have celebrated one, vaccine skeptics dying from COVID.
Right, there's
Colin,
that.
Mocking anti-vaxxers' COVID deaths is ghoulish, yes, but maybe necessary. We have Hamas murdering Jews on October 7th. Resistance is justified. Trump assassination attempt. And then the murder of a health insurance CEO. I'd also like to add they also celebrated Justice Scalia's death, Rush Limbaugh's death, the attack on Rand Paul. And then my personal addition would be Andy Bashar basically suggesting that J.D. Vance's children should be raped as kind of a fun fact. I mean, none of this is new, but there's a helpful and the other thing on Taylor Lorenz, she just said that people without masks, breathing without masks, are murdering people. Like that is equated to murder. but actual murder of a CEO is justified. So here's this graph for everyone who's wondering. It's a 4-quadrant graph: authoritarian, economic right, libertarian, and economic left. We have authoritarian economic right. Everything is genocide except actual genocide, which is fine. Everything is slavery except actual slavery, which is fine. Everything is theft except actual theft, which is fine. And then everything is violence except for actual violence, which is fine. Which is what I've kind of felt during the COVID period, right? Of like, words are violence, thoughts are violence, but then burning down cities is justified and totally fine. So it's kind of hard to
That's
work
where we
through all
are.
of this.
It's a good map.
Yeah. There we go.
Whoa.
So, and then, also on the insurance front too, one, insurance companies deserve to be shot, or CEOs deserve to be shot, but then riots burning down your businesses don't actually affect you because you have insurance. There's so many different layers to this, but I hope this guy's found. Now that that's a super controversial take. And then someone brought up I think this is actually subtle but important. I don't even know how subtle this is. Someone basically was like, why have no senators talked about this or utilized this as momentum basically to try to get something done on the healthcare front? This is from Ken Klippenstein. Haven't seen a single member of Congress acknowledge the rage seemingly everyone is expressing at the healthcare system. How hard is it to say, I don't condone violence, but people's pain is real? I'd be the first to say, I don't want to see more of this. Probably. This seems like an inopportune time to be giving in to people when people are being shot on the street for their profession.
Well, the thing is, healthcare is a third rail. Trump tried to do it to do that like kind of mini ACA repeal, and of course McCain knifed it.
Just failed.
I just can't see it happening. The only way to do it is to try to give some sort of tax incentives to grow people to get out of it. It's a thick with weeds. It's going to take a long time to try to undo this.